in the lecture series organized under Microbiotalk. Before I say anything else, thanks are in order. First, I want to thank all of you here for participating this afternoon for the Microbiotalk, a lecture series by successful eminent microbiologists on this platform, and it truly matters. I would like to welcome with deep gratitude Professor Avinash Sonauni, Professor, Department of Biosciences and Biomedical Engineering from IIT Indore for agreeing to be our inaugural speaker. More about him in a moment. Microbiome Talk is an online lecture series introduced under the aegis of Microbiome Olympiad. On this platform, successful eminent microbiologists will enlighten the young budding students to know the potential of the subject. The success stories will truly inspire the young minds. Our first speaker, or rather our inaugural speaker, Professor Avinash Sonauni, is an extraordinary choice for inaugurating this series. It's a great pleasure for me to introduce our speaker today, Professor Avinash Sonauni, who was conferred with PhD degree in molecular enzymology by University of Marburg, Germany. Thereafter, he pursued postdoctoral research from Department of Medicine, University of Florida, USA, Max Planck Institute of Infection Biology, Berlin, Germany, European Molecular Biology Laboratory, Heidelberg, Germany. He is a recipient of various national and international fellowships and awards and prizes for his contribution in the field of research and academics. He has completed 8 research projects funded by DST, DBT, ICMR, etc. At present, working on 4 research projects. He has total 52 publications in reputed journals to his credit. 1 international and 3 Indian patents have been registered on his name. 8 students have completed PhD under his guidance and many more are pursuing. Dr. Avinash Sonauni, Professor, Department of Biosciences and Biomedical Engineering, Indian Institute of Technology, Indore, is the most befitting scientist or microbiologist to inaugurate the lecture series under Microbiotalk. Dear participants, please join me to welcome him. I request Professor Sonauni sir to share his screen and begin with his deliberation.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Peshwe, for very generous introduction. I don't know whether I deserve to be called as a very successful microbiologist. That I will leave it up to you whether to decide whether I'm successful or not successful, this microbiologist. But anyway, I'm really thankful to Dr. Ullas and Dr. Peshwe for their kind invitation. So, in fact, Dr. Ullas and myself, we are associated for many years. In fact, we have done our masters from the same university, from the same department. And we know each other, I think, since last more than 20 years. So it's really a great pleasure to be here. And in fact, I know about this Microbiome Olympiad, the competition, which I think he and his team is organizing since last several years. And I must congratulate him and his team for organizing such a mega event where I could see the participation of the colleges from different parts of India. I have seen how students enthusiastically they participate, come up with innovative ideas, models. So it's really a great event, and I wish that he will continue to do so in future. And I wish him and his entire team all the best for organizing such an important event and keeping this microbiology alive. So when Ullas called me and he invited me to give a talk, so he particularly insisted me not to give a very purely scientific talk, because I understand that since our lockdown has started, the students might be attending many talks online, and I can see, I mean, it's my personal experience, when we are organizing any talk, it's really difficult to generate interest in the student, because students are really saturated with the online talk. So today I will not show you very pure scientific data, but I will just share my personal experiences, that how I started my journey as a microbiologist, what are the difficult phases I being coming from a very moderate background family. So what challenges or difficulties I faced when I pursued, like my career right after my like master's degree. So I will share my personal experience, and then I will talk about that what research I have done during my PhD and postdoctoral work. And at the last, I will share. I do understand that students are mostly interested to know the career this opportunity. So I will show some few slides that will show what are the opportunities for the microbiologist in various areas. So just a minute. Okay, can you see this slide now?
No, sir. No, sir.
You are not able to see the slides?
No, sir. Not yet.
Okay, just a minute. Now?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay, so you are able to see the slides now, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so basically I will split my talk into three major topics. So first, I will share that how I started my career as a microbiologist, whether it was by fluke or by destiny who took me like to this field. Then I will share like how I started my research career as a project assistant, and then through the PhD, then I did several postdocs at different institutes. And now I'm heading groups since independent groups since last 10, 12 years. So I will just share my research journey, what are the different areas I worked on in last 15 years. Although it will not be possible to share the data which we have generated in last 10, 12 years. But I will just like show some important findings which has emerged from our group. And I think as I mentioned, that the students will be more interested to know what are the opportunities for the microbiologists, not only in India, but abroad. And what are the examinations that they need to clear. So I will just share a few slides that will show the opportunities for the microbiologist. So before I start my talk, I would like to start my talk with a very famous quoting from Swami Vivekananda. So never say no, okay? Never say I cannot. For you are the infinite. All the power is within you, and you can do anything. So as I understand that, most of the students, not all, but I'd say the most of the maybe the undergraduate students or graduate students who are attending this today's talk. So most of the students might have come from a very like moderate background or the average background, or most of them might be from the rural areas or the urban areas. And I also hail from the same background. So in the next slide, I will show like will tell you a little bit about my background. So I'm also very like from the rural area, and I know what difficulties like we face, or what challenges we face, or what thoughts like comes to our mind when we take up any new any new opportunity or task. So being the like students coming from rural areas or from a moderate background, so we always like underestimate ourselves. So whenever we want to start something, so it always comes to our minds, okay, I'm going to take this task, but whether I can do this or not. So let me tell you, my friends, that nothing is impossible. I can give you n number of examples or great scientists. For example, Paul Lehning, I don't know if you have heard his name, who has got 2 Nobel Prize, one for his discovery in the chemistry and another for the Peace Prize. So if you look at to his biography, so he has come away from very difficult background. Even he was like struggling to find food, the resources to continue his education. But he was so determined that he wanted to do something in his life. And you can imagine that he got 2 Nobel Prizes for his contribution in humanities and chemistry. Similarly, I can give many examples from like great scientists from India. I don't know if you have heard this name, Srivastava Ramanujan. So if you read his like biography, he has also come up from a very humble background. But look at his contribution to the Indian science today. So this is mainly because, and if you like see the major discoveries done by the different people, and it has come from very ordinary people. Okay, so what they could do, because they had a self belief, self confidence. Okay, I can do this. So it is my like suggestion or advice to the students. So never underestimate yourself. Nothing is impossible. So if you have a self belief, self confidence, and if you have that gesture to like do something, I think you can. Nothing is impossible. So for that, what is important is that you should have some definite goal in your career. So you should know where we are going. You should know what are your weaknesses, what are your strengths, and you should have some definite goal in your mind. If you have that destiny in your mind, or if you can see the destiny where you want to head, I think you can achieve your goal. So this is not to like promote myself, but I think like we believe in more live examples. So I will just tell very briefly about me, that from where I come from. I think those who are from the Maharashtra, they might have heard this place, Malegaon, which is around 100 kilometers from the Nasik district. So I live in a very small place known as Esgaon. Okay, so this place is about 10 kilometers from Malegaon, and you can see the total population is 250. Okay, so it's a very small place. In fact, we live in like in the farms. Okay, and these people, the mainly the occupation of the people living in this small town is farming, or most of them are doing daily wages. I also come from a farmer's background. My father is like 8th standard. He studied up to 8th standard. My mother has studied up to 5th standard. I have 2 brothers and 2 sisters. Only my elder brother, he could study up to 10th standard, and my sisters and younger brother, they studied only up to 5th, 6th standard. So you can imagine, the education was not the main thing, like domain in our family. But my parents were not that educated. But only thing, my parents, they asked me that, okay, whatever you want to do in your life, okay, so whatever support we need, although we are illiterate, we don't know like much about the education, but whatever support is required from our side, we'll do it. But just keep in mind that whatever you'll do in your life, just make sure that you are doing for good, and you are not diverting yourself in bad things. So that's the only moral support I got from my parents. And I'm today, what I'm standing like in front of you, it is mainly because of the blessings and support from the family. So this is another quote like which I would like to share with you, that to succeed in life, you need 2 things: ignorance and confidence. So ignorance is what? It is not the ignorance for the good things. Okay, so you need to ignore the bad things, because whatever you want to start in your life, always there will be criticism. Okay, you might have experienced this, like on several occasions. If you want to do something, if the people don't know what will be the result, there will be always resistance. Okay, so why he is doing that? Why she is doing that? This will not lead to him or her anywhere. So always there will be criticism, okay, or resistance if you want to start something new thing in the society. So at that point, what you need to do is to ignore, okay, because if you have confidence that whatever path you are going to choose in your life, or whatever things you are going to do in your life, if you have confidence that, okay, whatever path I'm choosing, it is going to lead, or it is going to lead to success, or that is the thing which is going to give me more happiness. So if you have confidence, you can just make, ignore such things. So this, I will just like to share like how I started, like my journey. So I did my schooling up to 12th standard in Esgon, which is, like as shown, is a very small town. Then I did my undergraduation in Dhule. Then I moved to Pune. There I worked in National Chemical Laboratory, Pune, for a couple of years. Then I did my PhD from Germany. I did my postdoc from USA. And today, I'm happy to share that I have collaboration or working in 26 different countries now in collaboration. So when I started my journey in Esgon some 25 years back, that time I never thought that I will be able to do PhD abroad, because just imagine 20 years, 25 years back, some imagination to go abroad, because now the situation has changed. Now I think every family member in certain cities is studying abroad, but 25 years back the situation was very, very different. Okay, so so that time I never thought that I will get these opportunities, but only thing that I had a self-confidence. I was convinced myself that whatever I'm going to do, it is I'm doing for best, and you should always give a best effort, that whatever path you are choosing in your life. So I will just share this journey as a microbiologist, which I started in 1997, right after completion of my master's degree from North Maharashtra University. So after completion of my master's degree, I joined National Chemical Laboratory as a fermentation technologist. So I joined there as a project assistant, and I was working on production of a cyclohexylene molecule. So we use these different fermentation technologies. So while doing working as a project assistant at National Chemical Laboratory, I appeared for this GRE examination. I also gave some entrance examination in various countries. So that time I got selected in 2 universities, from University of Edmonton, Alberta in Edmonton, Canada, and University of Marburg from Germany. So for some reason, I decided to go to this University of Marburg. So there I worked on this plant microbe interaction. So after completion of my PhD in Germany, then I moved to University of Florida. There I worked. There actually I started to work on human disease biology. So I was working on a disease called as cystic fibrosis patients. In the next slide, I will show you give you some brief background about the disease and what was my project. So I worked there from 2004 to 2006. Then from human disease biology, I changed my path a little bit, and then I started to work on host pathogen interaction. So I worked on mainly tuberculosis disease at Max Planck Institute for Infection Biology in Berlin. Then from there, we moved to European Molecular Biology Laboratory in Heidelberg, Germany. Then I got the JSPS fellowship in Japan. I moved to Nara Institute of Technology in Japan. There I continued to work on tuberculosis. So from 2006 to 2009, I worked in 3 different institutes on host pathogen interactions. Then after completion of my postdoctoral study, I came back to India in 2009. Earlier, I was in Bhubaneswar in KIT University, and then just a few years back, I moved to IIT Indore. And then I continued to work on host pathogen interaction. So here, in addition to tuberculosis, our group also started to work on leukemia. So today, our group is mainly working on 2 areas, that is tuberculosis and leukemia. So what I wanted to show you here, that you see, I started my career as a fermentation biologist. Today in 2021, my main focus is on cellular microbiologist. So you may think that there is no correlation of these 2 fields, but I would like to point out that today, as a cellular microbiologist, we are working on 2 areas, that is leukemia, and we are working on one enzyme called as asparaginase enzyme. So I will come to that. And we want to start some phase 1 clinical trial of this molecule. And for that, we need to do downstream processing and upscaling of this enzyme. So the work which I did in 1997 as a fermentation biologist, so that the knowledge which I gained in 1997, okay, that is helping me a lot in 2021, although my field is completely different. Okay, I work on in the immunology field. But for production of this enzyme, or we want to start this clinical trial, so what should be the parameters? How fermentation technology can be used as a tool to increase the yield of this enzyme or the properties of this enzyme? So we can never say that. But nowadays the science has become so interdisciplinary. Okay, so but the more knowledge you gain in different fields, that will help you later in your career. So what I wanted to, because most of the students, they come to us and they always complain, sir, I did my project in plant biology. Now I want to switch to infection biology. Can I do that? Whether I will get selected for a PhD or not. Now some students, they tell that, sir, I did my PhD in agriculture. Now I want to shift to the drug delivery. Can I do that? Because I don't have any experience, whether I will get selected or not. So what I want to tell you that up to PhD or even after a couple of years post your PhD, you can choose the field you want to do. Okay, so for you, the most important thing is that where you get happiness. Okay, so you can try on trial basis different fields, but of course after a certain stage you need to decide that in which area or in which field you want to pursue your career. So never think that I did my master's in microbiology, can I switch to the physics or not, or can I switch to the chemistry or not, or can I work on biophysics or not. So now more you become interdisciplinary in early in your career, that is going to help you in your later in your fields. So never get confused that in changing field whether that will cause any harm. So now how I started my career as a microbiologist. So I started when I went to Germany. So I started to work on a topic, that is role of Pseudomonas pituita genes in the utilization of amino acids from the rhizosporic plant. So Professor Klaus Rom was my PhD supervisor, and I just still remember my first day in the Marburg. See, I was living in a very small town, although I spent a couple of years in Jalgaon, Dhule, and in Pune. So when I reached to Germany in 2000, okay, I still remember my first. The moment I landed at the Frankfurt airport, the temperature was -20, and it was terribly cold, and I could not sustain that cold. So somehow I reached to the hostel. And there it was like December time, Christmas time, where you see no people outside the street. It was completely completely pin drop silence all over. So I spent almost 10 days sitting inside the room, fighting for this -20 temperature. Sometimes I felt that why I came here, because it was so difficult. I mean, the cold was one thing, and then the food was another issue, because there people, as you know, that they mostly use eat fast food, sometimes baked food, partially uncooked food. So I had a lot of difficulties in the beginning. Sometimes I was thinking that on one hand I was feeling proud that I came to Germany, but I was also feeling bad, how to stay here for 3-4 years for completion of my PhD. But and I think that happens with most of the students, because when you go to any new place, always you have to find some difficulties. But if you are convinced yourself that you have come here for some cause or to do some work, so never get, because all these food, climatic conditions, these are all secondary issues. Okay, so for you, what is more important is that you have come to make your career here. So this is about the social life. But then when I went to lab, okay, so that when we do practicals, during our master's course, what kind of exposure we get, there are several limitations. We don't have very sophisticated equipments. Chemicals are very limited. So we have all sorts of limitations. But when I went to Germany, okay, so the first day when I met my professor, and he was telling me that, okay, this is your project. Now you are going to work on this asparaginase enzyme. So you need to clone this enzyme in different vectors, express this protein. Then you need to do a protein engineering of this asparaginase enzyme. It means you have to make several mutations in this enzyme. So I was, like, because these are the terms, like, which I heard first time there. Okay, so I never did a gene cloning. Okay. I was not aware about what are the molecular biology techniques. Protein engineering was too far. Okay, so I just heard the terminology protein engineering, but actually how to do it, how to engineer these enzymes. So I was completely unaware about this technique. So initially I got very, very nervous there because uh, the colleagues or the students who were working in that lab, mostly they were from Germany, few were from Russia, and I think a couple of students were from South Africa. And I was the only one from India. And those students, they had a better like exposure than me. So they knew all these techniques. When I used to go to lab, these students like they used to work very fastly, and then I used to think that how to start this gene cloning, because I don't know how to do digestion, how to design primer, how to do PCR. So I was very nervous in the beginning, and then one day I told my colleague that I'm very nervous and I don't know whether I'll be able to do my work, because I don't know any of these techniques. Because then you cannot go to the professor and ask, because they expect you to know these techniques. Okay. So you cannot go and ask them that what is gene and how to design primers, because they expect that you know all these techniques. So I was a bit hesitant to even tell this to my supervisor that I don't know these techniques. But then after a few days, I explained this to my friend. Then he told me, okay, I will connect you to the students who are working in using these techniques. So he introduced me to the students working from other labs. I used to go because they were also busy in their work. So I used to find when they are free. I used to go talk to them, listen to them, learn that how they are doing this cloning, how protein engineering can be done. So initially for 5 to 6 months, I struggled a lot to learn these techniques. So and when I learned these techniques, so during my PhD, we identified a new two-component system which is involved for uptake and metabolism of amino acids in. Then when I learned these techniques, then we identified that what are the different Pseudomonas aeruginosa proteins. They are induced when these bacteria are exposed to acidic amino acids. So as you can see here. So this study was published in Microbiology. So here what I want to tell you that initially I was struggling a lot to learn these techniques. I was not aware about most of the techniques. But in after 1 year, I got the confidence that I can do this. And in fact, I can tell you, I'm happy to share that. After 1 year, the Professor Klaus Rem, my PhD supervisor, he mentioned on several platforms that I have an Indian student and who is the most prolific worker in my lab, and he is the most whatever task you give to him, he will complete within that. So he had developed that kind of this perception about me. And that's the reason, the purposely I'm showing these publications to you. After completion of my PhD, I had 4 publications, but as you can see that out of these 4 publications, in 2 publications, he put me as a corresponding author. Why? Because that's very rare that in foreign countries, your PhD supervisor will make the PhD student as the corresponding author. The reason he gave me first authorship as well as corresponding authorship, because after 1 year, I rarely go with some difficulties to him. I used to learn all the techniques on my own. I used to design the experiments. After doing the experiment, I used to go and just show him the results. So he was so impressed that you used to tell them, okay, you have conceptualized this project, you have implemented this project, you have executed all the experiments. So this is all your work. So he was very generous to give me a corresponding authorship. So this helped me when I applied for the postdoctoral position, because my postdoctoral supervisor, he was also he asked me first question that how you can be a corresponding author during your PhD, that in the foreign countries. So this is how the reason I'm telling you all this is that even though you face some difficulties in the beginning, you may face many different challenges, but never lose your self-confidence. Okay. So when there is a problem, always there is the solution. You discuss with other people, you develop network. If you cannot do anything, or if you don't know anything, you talk to your colleagues, you talk to your friends, and try to get your done. Okay. So yeah. So what I try to tell you, that there is no secret to the success. It is the result of preparation, that how you prepare yourself. With preparation, that how hard work you put in to achieve your goal, and learning from the failure, because it is not like I started something to work there and everything clicked and I used to get. So when I started this cloning of gene, because I was not aware about this technique at all, as I mentioned. So there were a lot of like mistakes. I failed several times, but finally I succeeded. Similarly, when I did the protein engineering, I could not, the design of this engineering was wrong. I selected this wrong molecule. So a lot of difficulties came in the beginning. Okay, but finally, because when you make some mistakes, you learn a lot from your mistakes. So you should learn from the failures. Okay. So after completion of my PhD, I went to University of Florida, and this is where I started my postdoctoral journey. So here I worked on, I worked with Professor Ruben Rampal at Department of Medicine, University of Florida. So he gave me a project that he wanted to know that why cystic fibrosis patients. So it is a genetic disorder. So in USA and Canada, this disease is very common, particularly in child. Okay, and they have found that these cystic fibrosis patients, they are more susceptible to Pseudomonas aeruginosa infection. So it is a hospital-borne infection. So he wanted me to understand what are the mechanisms why these cystic fibrosis patients are more susceptible to Pseudomonas aeruginosa infection. So I will just give you some little background about this disease. So cystic fibrosis is an autosomal recessive multi and it is caused by the mutation in the CFTR gene, okay, which codes for the CFTR protein, and it is mainly present in the epithelial cells. So what happens in the epithelial cells, which are lining to our respiratory tract? These epithelial cells, they express the CFTR protein, that is transmembrane conductance regulator protein, and this is nothing but a channel. Okay, so the water and salt ions, they pass through these channels and enter into our respiratory tract. So what happens, whatever mucus is present in our respiratory tract, so this water is coming through the channel, and this water, it helps in the dilution of this mucus. Okay, so that's why we don't face any like clogging problem. But when there is a mutation in this protein, the water or the ions, they are not able to move into the respiratory tract. So what happens? The water level goes down. So whatever mucus is secreted by these epithelial cells, that becomes very thick. Okay, and because of the increase in the thickness, the patient, they are not able to breathe because their respiratory tract gets clogged with this thick mucus. And in this thick mucus, because when we inhale or breathe, the lot of microorganisms which are present in the environment, okay, we inhale this. So these inhaled microorganisms, they get trapped in this thick mucus and they survive there. Okay, so because this mucus also has a lot of nutrients, growth factors there. So this bacteria, they get trapped in this thick mucus and they grow. And that's how, so even we take these antibiotics, they are not able to penetrate into this thick mucus. So the bacteria multiplies, survives, and it causes chronic infection in the cystic fibrosis patients. So here's, I'm just showing what happens in the cystic fibrosis patient. So when it is like healthy, these epithelial cells which are present here, they, because of this presence of this CFTR channel here, the water goes inside, so this mucus gets diluted. But in cystic fibrosis patient, when there is mutation in this CFTR protein, the water or the ions, they cannot move inside. So what happens? Whatever mucus is secreted by these epithelial cells, it becomes very thick, and this cystic fibrosis patient, they suffer from breathing or the asthma, and in most of the cases they die. So what happens in cystic fibrosis patients? So this Pseudomonas aeruginosa, it infects these lungs, okay, and because of this thick mucus, the antibiotics, they are not able to penetrate into this thick mucus, and this bacteria, it starts to multiply. And after some time, you might have heard this term, that's biofilm formation. So biofilm is nothing but the colonization of the bacteria, or it forms a very compact mass. So over the period of time, what happens? These bacteria, they start to multiply and they form the mass, okay, so which is called as the biofilms. And this biofilm is then gets covered by the lipopolysaccharides secreted by these microorganisms. So this is the thick lipopolysaccharide layer which is protecting these bacteria in the lungs of cystic fibrosis patients. So even these patients, they take these antibiotics are not able to penetrate here. Okay, so and then this Pseudomonas aeruginosa, it multiplies. So I was trying to see that what are the mechanisms by which this Pseudomonas, it forms these biofilms and establish a chronic infection. So you are able to hear me, right? Hello?
Yes, sir, you are audible, sir.
Okay. So because I just, you see, giving this online talk is so, sometimes like we are just giving talk blindly. So I have to make sure in between that I'm audible to you.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Yeah. So just let me know, okay, when time is. Otherwise, like I will just keep on talking. Like, so feel free to like buzz me once time is over.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So what happens? So this Pseudomonas aeruginosa, it is a motile organism. Okay, it's a flagellated organism. So what happens when this organism infects the lungs of the cystic fibrosis patient? This bacteria, it has this flagella, and this flagella interacts with the macrophages, which are the innate immune cells. And these macrophages, they have several receptors on their surface. Okay, and one of the receptor is known as toll-like receptor 5. I don't know if you have heard this name. So toll-like receptor, these are different toll-like receptors present on the macrophages. So one of the toll-like receptor is known as the TLR5. And the flagella of this organism, it interacts with this toll-like receptor present on the macrophages. And this interaction helps the activation of the macrophages. And when these macrophages, they get activated, they engulf this Pseudomonas organism inside the cells, and it kills this Pseudomonas. Okay. But in CF patient, what happens? These organisms, they activate these neutrophils. Okay, and these neutrophils, when they get activated, they secrete an enzyme known as this neutrophil elastase enzyme. Okay, so this neutrophil elastase enzyme, it helps in the repression of this flagella synthesis of this microorganism. So what happens when these bacteria, they are not able to synthesize the flagella because of the secretion of this neutrophil elastase enzyme from the neutrophils? This flagella does not interact with the macrophages, and as a result, this bacteria is not engulfed by the macrophages, so they just remain outside the macrophages. So they multiply, their number increases, and it causes the chronic infection. So this is the mechanism I discovered during my postdoctoral studies at the University of Florida. So when I was doing this study, so once I came back to India just to visit my parents, and we had a guy who was working, with family for as a like daily wage for many years. So when I came to visit my family, so he was bedridden, and then he was diagnosed with the tuberculosis. So unfortunately, he died after 2 years. But I could see like suffering from him. He had two like small kids. Because till that time, I was not very much aware about this disease, tuberculosis, although I have heard this name. Then unfortunately he died, and then I could see that his two like young kids, they suffered a lot because they were came from very poor family. So then when I studied about this disease, then I found that this disease is indeed a plight in India. Okay, because India has the highest burden of tuberculosis patients. Okay, so when I read more about this disease, what are its causes, what are the drugs available, about the vaccines and this, so I really got interested in this area, and then that's where I started to work on. So after completion of my postdoctoral studies at University of Florida, I briefly went to Japan to Nara Technology Institute, and then I came back to I came back to Max Planck Institute, Berlin. So there I started to work on the tuberculosis. So I'll just give some very brief background about the TB. So as even today, because this disease was discovered like several centuries ago, till today, every year, 9 million people they newly get infected with tuberculosis. So 1/3 of the world's population is still infected with TB, and around 1.9 million people they die from tuberculosis every year. And this situation is more precarious in India. Okay, so in India, there are total 2.2 million people they are infected with the TB. If we look at to the statistics, so every 2 minutes, one person die from TB in India. Okay. So WHO, that is World Health Organization, has identified 22 high burden countries in India. And India is the highest burden country for the TB in the world. So so if you look at to these different numbers, so 1 out of 5 TB patients in the world is an Indian. Okay. 2.2 million TB patients in India, the largest in the world. So there are 66,000 new cases of multi-drug resistant TBs are diagnosed in India. Okay. And 2 to 3% of the Indian TB patients, they are drug resistant, which is a very alarming situation, because when the person gets infected with drug resistant, that is multi-drug resistant and extremely drug resistant, this mycobacteria, there is no treatment for this. So their death rate is very high. And unfortunately, India has the largest number of multi-drug resistant TB patients. So I will just tell you very briefly that how this disease is transmitted. So it is an airborne infection. When the person is infected with tuberculosis, when there is an acute TB, so when this infected person sneezes or coughs, so it forms a droplets, and these droplets, it contains this Mycobacterium tuberculosis bacteria, which is responsible for causing the TB. And when these infected droplets are inhaled by the healthy individual, these droplets, they traverse through the respiratory tract and gets deposited into the alveoli, in the macrophages. And so this is the magnified this version of this macrophages. So these are the alveolar macrophages which are present in the lungs. So this mycobacteria, it infects these alveolar macrophages, and it manipulates the immune function of these macrophages. So these macrophages, they are not able to kill this bacteria. So as a result, this bacteria, it multiplies inside the macrophages, and their number increases so large that they basically rupture these alveolar macrophages. They release outside, and then again they infect these new cells. And that's how their number increases in the lung, and it forms a chronic infection. So I will not go into, because there are so far only TB is mainly treated by 2 line of drugs, that is first line drugs, which mainly includes rifampicin, ethambutol, then pyrazinamide and isoniazid. Okay. These are the 5 drugs which are known as the first line drugs. So then there are some second line drugs like this ofloxacin, then moxifloxacin, then kanamycin. So these are the second line drugs. So the TB is mainly treated by this first line and second line drugs. So what are the challenges with the TB? Okay. So initially when this disease was discovered, so this TB was caused by Mycobacterium tuberculosis, which was sensitive to all these drugs. Then with time, this TB got converted into multi-drug TB, multi-drug resistance TB. So these mycobacterial strains were resistant to 2 first-line drugs such as isoniazid and rifampicin, because these 2 drugs are the most potent anti-tuberculosis drugs. So this multi-drug resistance TB, it was resistant to isoniazid and rifampicin. Then slowly, with evolution, this MDR TB got developed into XDR TB, that is extensively resistant drug resistant TB. So this strain is resistant to the first line drugs, rifampicin, isoniazid, and plus to some the second line drugs. Now this XDR TB has again developed into TDR, that is totally drug resistant TB. So these strains are resistant to all these anti-TB drugs, and there is no treatment for this TDR TB. Even treatment of this XDR TB itself is a huge challenge. Okay, and TDR TB, when the person gets infected with this TDR TB, there is no treatment, and the death rate is more than 95%. Okay. So today our group is mainly working on the tuberculosis. We worked on several areas. So we mainly work on Mycobacterium tuberculosis glycoproteins and some glycolipids, which are present on the cell surface of the bacteria. And our group is trying to understand but we have shown that many of these glycoproteins and glycolipids, they act as a major virulence factor. So they are mainly responsible for progression of the tuberculosis infection. So we're trying to understand that how these glycoproteins and glycolipids, they are involved in the pathogenicity. We have found that some of these glycoproteins are also very immunogenic in nature. So they can be used as a vaccine candidates. So we're trying to identify some glycoproteins and some glycopeptides, which can be used as a vaccine candidate. Similarly, we have shown that many of these glycoproteins which are present on the surface of the bacteria, they are mainly responsible for the drug resistance because they prevent the binding of these drug molecules to the cell surface. So we're trying to see that what are the changes it takes place in the glycoprotein, how they are involved in the drug resistance. As you know that there are two types of TB, that is chronic TB and acute TB. Okay, so chronic TB means the person does not show any symptoms, but it is infected with TB. So we have some evidences that in chronic TB patients, they are more susceptible to the cancer development. So we have some data which shows that if this chronic TB is not treated properly, so this chronic infection leads to lung cancer. Okay, so we are working in this area. Similarly, as I told you that there are these XDR and TDR TB strains, they are resistant to most of the anti-TB drug molecules. So we're trying to identify some drugs which are used for the treatment of other diseases. So can we use these drugs for the treatment of tuberculosis? So that is called as repurposing of drugs. Okay, repurposing means the drugs, they are actually discovered for the treatment of some other diseases, but these drugs can also be used for the treatment of other diseases. So that is called as repurposing. So you are changing the purpose of these drugs. So we are trying to identify the library of the repurposed drugs which can be used for the treatment of anti-TB. And the major problem is that because the Mycobacterium tuberculosis is the intracellular pathogen, it remains inside the cells. So we're trying to develop some drug delivery systems which will deliver these anti-TB drugs, particularly to the Mycobacteria infected macrophages. So recently we have studied to also work on the bone marrow stem cells, because earlier it was widely believed that TB mainly occurs in the lungs. But in last several years, several studies have shown that if this TB is not treated in the lungs, so slowly this bacteria, it starts to migrate from the lungs and goes in the bone marrow. And this bone marrow is very, very safe environment for the bacteria, because the drugs cannot penetrate into the bone marrow. Okay. As compared to lungs and other organs, their immune system is, the immune cell population is less. Okay. So this is a very favorable environment for the mycobacteria. So this bacteria, it remains in the bone marrow, and when our immune system becomes weak or when we become old, these bacteria, they multiply in the bone marrow, and then they leave bone marrow and then again migrate to different organs and cause disease, TB there. Okay. So we're trying to see that how this mycobacteria manipulate the environment in the bone marrow, particularly in the stem cells, that help this bacteria to remain in dormant stage and cause chronic infection. And for doing all these studies, we are basically using different models. We primarily use the lung macrophages, stem cells, and in vivo model, we use mice models and a zebrafish model. Here, I will just show you one gene, which is responsible for causing tuberculosis in fish. You will be surprised to know that the symptoms and the pathology of tuberculosis in zebrafish is very much similar to the TB caused in the human. So that's why this zebrafish is used as a popular model to study the tuberculosis, because a lot of mechanisms, the factors, is similar in zebrafish and in human. So we are using this zebrafish as a model to study the progression of this tuberculosis. So here we just identified one protein that is called as the MIMG protein. We showed that this protein is very much important for causing tuberculosis in the fish. So as you can see here, we took these 4 different types of fish. This is untreated this zebrafish, and this fish was infected with Mycobacterium marinum. Okay? Because in human, the TB is caused by Mycobacterium tuberculosis, and in fish, this TB is caused by Mycobacterium marinum. So we infected the fish with Mycobacterium marinum, and then other fish we infected with the Mycobacterium marinum, where this MIMG gene is deleted. Okay. So as you can see that the fish which was infected with the marinum, you can see the symptoms of the fish. And when we deleted this gene, this development of this TB was significantly reduced. Okay. And when we made longitudinal section of this fish and then did acid-fast staining, the student might have done gram staining. You know about this acid-fast staining, right? So it is used for staining of the acid-fast bacteria, and Mycobacterium is the acid-fast bacteria. So when we made longitudinal sections of this fish and did acid-fast staining, so as you can see that the fish which were infected with this Mycobacterium marinum, there were large number of acid-fast bacteria were present. But when we deleted this gene in Mycobacterium marinum, there were very less number of bacteria were present. So it means this gene is very much important for causing disease. And when we complemented this strain with this MIM gene, we found that again their number is increasing. So it shows that this gene is very much important for causing tuberculosis in fish. Okay. So like that, we have identified many more proteins which are important for the pathogenesis. So I'm not going to show that data. Then we also scored when these fish were infected with these different strains. So we found that when these fish were infected with the Mycobacterium marinum wild type strain, the fish, they die very rapidly. But when the fish were infected with this MIMG deleted strain, the survival of this fish increased. So all these studies, it shows that this protein is important for causing disease in the fish. Similarly, we have found that this protein is very much important for invading the host cells, particularly in the macrophages. It helps this bacteria to survive inside the cells. This protein is also very much important for adhesion to these cells. Okay, so this is an important virulence factor. Another area we are working on the bone marrow stem cells. So as I showed you that the TB, Mycobacterium tuberculosis, if it is not treated in the lungs, then slowly it migrates to the bone marrow, and there it establishes this dormant infection. So we have shown that. So we isolated these bone marrow stem cells from the mice, and infected them with JP expressing bacteria. So these are the stem cells, bone marrow stem cells. As you can see, and you see this green bacteria there. So these bacteria, they are able to infect these stem cells. But we found that these cells, they are not able to kill mycobacteria. So we studied the mechanism that these stem cells, they express several different types of antimicrobial peptides. And these antimicrobial peptides are important for the killing of this intracellular bacteria. But what we have shown that when the stem cells are infected with this bacteria, it downregulates the synthesis of these antimicrobial peptides in stem cells. And because of this very low expression of these antimicrobial peptides in the stem cells, these mycobacteria, they are able to survive inside the stem cells for a longer period of time. Of course, we did a lot of studies, signaling mechanisms, which I'm not going to show here. I will just show some very few slides about another area we are working on. So you remember that when I showed the first slide, during my PhD, I started to work on the asparaginase enzyme. So we are working on this E. coli asparaginase to improve the treatment of primary and relapsed acute lymphatic leukemia. It is nothing but a blood cancer because this enzyme has a lot of limitations. Okay, so I will just show you, give you a very brief background about this acute lymphatic leukemia. So normally what happens in normal blood, they have RBCs, neutrophils, macrophages. But when these cells transform into blast or in leukemic cells, okay, so these cells, they become very immature. Okay, and since these are malignant cells, their multiplication rate is very high. And these immature cells, they are not able to fight infection. So what happens when they turn leukemic? slowly the population of these blast or these leukemic cells, it increases and they overcrowd the healthy cells. So after some time, the population of these leukemic cells increases and the population of these healthy cells becomes very, very less. And then slowly these cells, they migrate to the blood and it gets circulated through the circulation system, and then they get deposited in various organs, and if not treated, then this person dies. So this asparaginase enzyme, it is marketed by several different names: asparaginase medac, asparaginase cridolase. So these are the different formulations of the asparaginase used for the treatment of this acute lymphatic leukemia. But these drugs, they have several limitations because this is the blood cancer, so this enzyme is given in the blood. Okay, but this enzyme, when it goes in the blood, its enzymatic activity is significantly reduced, and it is rapidly degraded in the serum. So as a result, the patient has to take this enzyme very repeatedly and higher doses. And this repeated and higher doses, it causes a lot of toxicity, like neurotoxicity. And since this is a bacterial protein given to the human, so human body recognizes this as a foreign protein, and it produces antibodies against this enzyme. So this enzyme is immunogenic in nature. So production of these antibodies, this enzyme becomes inactive. Okay, so because of these side activities, the patients, they suffer from hypersensitivity reactions, allergic reactions. It causes toxicity to several vital organs like lymph nodes, liver, and spleen. So another problem with this enzyme is that since it is a bacterial protein, and when it is given to the human body, it produces anti-asparaginase antibodies. And when there is relapse acute lymphatic leukemia, when there is a recurrence of this disease, when the second time this enzyme is given, so this human or this ALL patient, they already have antibodies against this enzyme. So these antibodies, they bind to this enzyme and basically it neutralizes. Okay, so when this enzyme is neutralized, then its therapeutic efficacy is not achieved. So treatment of this relapse acute lymphatic leukemia is a huge challenge, and their success rate is very high. So we wanted to develop an enzyme which could be more active, which has low glutaminase activity, which is responsible for the toxicity. It should be a low immunogenic. So we generated more than 15,000 mutants by site-directed mutagenesis and protein engineering approach. And finally, now we developed one single protein, so one single enzyme, which is highly active, has low glutaminase activity and low immunogenicity. Okay. We have also shown that this enzyme does not bind to the pre-existing antibodies present in the ALL patient. So this enzyme can also be used for the treatment of acute lymphatic leukemia. So we did a lot of these immunogenicity studies. We gave it to the mice, booster dose up to 66 days. Then we studied the production of antibodies like IgG and IgM antibody. As you can see that the mice which were given this wild type asparagine, antibody production is very high. But when our enzyme is given, the antibody production is very less. Similar case was with this IgG antibody. We also studied in the patients, acute lymphatic leukemia patients, and we found that the patients which has antibodies against this asparaginase enzyme, so our enzyme does not bind to this enzyme. So we believe that this enzyme can also be used for the treatment of. So this is just to summarize. So this work we started in 2009 and today is 2021. So this is the work of, like this one slide shows the work of last 11 years. So we have, this is the comparative study of our asparaginase enzyme. So our enzyme has very high enzymatic activity. It has low glutaminase activity, which is responsible for the neurotoxicity. It does not induce any immunogenicity, so there are less antibodies are produced. We have shown that this enzyme it has very high toxicity towards the leukemic cells and not to the healthy cells. And it does not bind to the pre-existing antibodies which are present in the ALL patients. So we believe that this enzyme can be used for the treatment of relapsed ALL patients. So we have also filed a US patent, and this product also received a national bio. And I'm very happy to share that this enzyme has entered into the phase clinical trial now. So we're starting, so we just tied up with Epigen Biotech, which is a pharmaceutical company in Mumbai, Tata Hospital Mumbai, and Mumbai. So we four are joined together to start the phase 1 clinical trial of this enzyme. So basically, initially we'll be testing this enzyme on 50 ALL patients which are recruited. So of course, this work was done by several PhD students, project assistants, several these JRFs, SRFs, postdoctoral students, and of course in collaboration with various collaborators. So this is all about the work. I just presented maybe 5% of the work which we have done in last 10, 12 years. Just to give an overview about the different activities going on in our lab. So just last 2 slides, I will show about what are the opportunities for the microbiologist. As you might be aware that there are various exams which the students can appear for to pursue their highest degree, that is a PhD degree. In addition to this, I don't know if you are aware this, the DST Inspire Fellowship, which is normally given to the toppers in the university. So you get fellowship for 5 years. So this is given by the Department of Science. So you will get fellowship for the 5 years with some contingency money and some small funding to carry out your research. And you will get quite reasonable amount of fellowship per year. So this is one way. So you can also apply for various junior research fellowship programs. So if some faculty has received any project, funded project, you can apply for junior research fellowships. And in many of these institutes, the junior research fellowship can also be converted into the PhD. So you can continue your PhD. Apart from that, there are various entrance examinations conducted by IISc, IITs. If you want to get more information about the IITs, maybe I can share that information with Dr. Ullas and he can circulate the students. Of course, you are aware about this CSIR, UGC, NET. In addition to that, DBT, DST, and ICM are also conducting, they are giving fellowships for the PhD as well as postdoctoral student. So maybe from the time to time, you can visit Department of Biotechnology, Science and Technology, and Indian Council of Medical Research website. They have these various opportunities for the PhD and postdoctoral students. Of course, if you want to study abroad, there are various countries that you should think about. Like USA, it is the most favored destination for the Indians, followed by Canada, UK, and in European countries, for example, Germany, France, Switzerland, Denmark, Sweden. These are the most favored countries for doing the higher studies. So there are several ways by which you can get opportunities here. One is the English-speaking countries like USA, Canada, UK, they require these 2 examinations, that is graduate GRE and IELTS or the TOEFL. So you need to qualify these examinations in order to get admitted into the universities in USA, Canada, or even UK or Australia. Fortunately, because of this COVID situation now, most of the universities, they have exempted the students from GRE and TOEFL. Okay, so you can get selected just based on your research proposal, your statement of purpose, and your recommendation letters. So in fact, I'm just wanted to share that I'm also Dean of International Affairs at IIT Indore. So I'm organizing various programs for our IIT students. So I'm inviting various recruiters from various universities from USA, Canada, European countries, and they are talking about what are the different opportunities for the students, how they can appear, how they can get selected. Maybe if you want, I can also talk to Dr. Ullas, and those who are interested, maybe they can join in this program and interact with them. So in fact, tomorrow, there is a team of the French embassy. They are giving talk to our PhD students, and they will be talking about what are the different opportunities in the France. So if you want, you can join in such events. So you will get more, get to know that what are the different opportunities and how you can get admitted. So this is probably like various sectors where microbiologists can work, right from research organizations to clinical research companies, diagnostic. Here, I would like to mention that microbiology is one of the subject which is interlinked to almost all. So as compared to other subjects, the microbiology has a vast opportunities because it is applicable in any field, be it industry, in food, in beverages, in dairy, pharmaceutical, biotechnological, or even in petroleum, fertilizers. It is also applicable for the water management, waste management, climatic conditions, hospitals, diagnostics. So you can see there are a lot of opportunities for the microbiologists. So only thing you need to do is to keep your eyes open, develop your network, keep an eye on the opportunities. You should make habits of visiting different websites in various universities, see what are the positions available there. Maybe I can share some links where very regularly the PhD positions are advertised. You can apply there and maybe you can like get selected in any university. So these are the different companies that you may know in India, where they are recruiting microbiologists on a very regular basis. Okay, so what last I would like to conclude that, see, a goal without a plan is just a wish. Okay, so you cannot just like dream that I want to become this, do that in there. So you need to plan your life. You need to execute your plans, and you should have some goals in your mind. Then I think you can reach to your destination. So before I conclude this talk, I just wanted to share one slide. So actually, I'm organizing the talks which will be given by the Nobel laureate, Professor William Phillips, which is on 17th of February. So he has received Nobel Prize in physics in 1997. So he will be giving talk on 17th February. So if you are interested, I can share the link with Dr. Ullas, and he can share that with. So those who are interested to attend this Nobel laureate talk, you can register and attend this talk. So we have one more talk on 23rd February, which will be given by Professor David Wineland. So he has received Nobel Prize in 2012. So he will be giving talk on 23rd at 9:30 a.m. So, and those who will attend this talk, they will be also receive a participation certificate from IIT Indore. So if you are interested, you can join these talks. So with this, I conclude here, I stop here, and I hope I did not bore you much. So thank you for your patient hearing. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir, for this such an interesting deliberation. Because of the paucity of time, we cannot take up much questions from the students, but one or two questions can be taken. Students can type the question in the chat box. Yes, any questions? Krishna, you can ask the question. Krishna Shinde.
Hello,
Yes, Krishna.
am I audible?
Yes, yes.
सर ज्यावेळेस तुम्ही जर्मनीला गेले होते त्यावेळेस कम्युनिकेशन बद्दल कोणत्या कोणत्या अडचणी आल्यात आणि त्याला तुम्ही कसं ओव्हरकम केलं?
हे बघा, जसं मी सांगितलं की मी पण एका खेडेगावात बॉर्न अँड बॉट अप इन अ विलेज. English, like I studied mostly in Dhule and Jalgaon, so you can imagine, English exposure वगैरे मिळत असेल. So when I went to Germany, of course, I had a lot of difficulties in communication. तर जर्मनीला actually English is not their first language. तर ते जर्मन जास्त बोलतात, and they prefer की जोही त्यांच्या country जात असेल, they expect that this person should speak German. Okay. So initially, I faced a lot of problems. Although English was okay, I could communicate with them, but it is not something extraordinary, like Americans or Canadians or British. So I had a lot of problems because in institution, many of them they communicate in English, but in Germany, of course, now the situation has changed. मागच्या काही वर्षापूर्वी सिच्युएशन बऱ्यापैकी चेंज झालेली आहे. तर जे काही Germans, if you go outside the institution, so they speak English. But when I went there in 2000, their German was the first this thing. So I had a lot of difficulties in understanding the German or communicating with the German people. So मी तिथे गेल्यानंतर मी जर्मन क्लास जॉईन केला. ओके, सो मी जर्मन क्लास जवळजवळ 6 ते 8 महिने केला आणि then त्याच्यानंतर मी त्यात like I learned the basic the German language. So that's what I'm saying. You see, you have to see, because this also gave opportunity. म्हणजे मी तिथे गेलो नसतो, जर मला कंपल्शन झालं नसतं तर मी कधीच आयुष्यात जर्मन शिकलो नसतो. बट टुडे वेन एव्हर आय गो, मी 2000 पासून तर 2020 पर्यंत असं एकही वर्ष गेलं नाही की मी जर्मनीला गेलो नाही. सो एव्हरी इयर आय गो देअर. आणि तर मला आता ना लाईक दॅट हेल्प मी लॉट नाव. आता मला गेल्यानंतर ना लाईक आय कॅन कम्युनिकेट विथ द पीपल, आय कॅन स्पीक विथ देम ना लाईक इन जर्मन लिटल बिट. आय मीन नॉट व्हेरी प्रोफिशियंट बट आय कॅन कम्युनिकेट विथ देम. So yeah, so no, like so particularly in European countries you need to learn their native language, but I don't think that's a barrier, because तुम्ही जर गेल्यानंतर they will provide you all facilities. ते तुम्हाला सगळे facilities देतील language learn करण्याला. Even you don't have to pay for learning this language, because they feel so happy that someone from other countries coming to our country and trying to learn our language.
There's one more question from Shreya Jadhav.
Hello, sir.
Hello, yeah.
My question was like, how can we make most out of our undergraduate degree?
How can we
make most out of our undergraduate degree? जसं की तुम्ही मेन्शन केलं होतं की तुम्ही तिकडे गेल्यानंतर तुमचं आधी तुम्हाला जीन एडिटिंग वगैरे माहिती नव्हतं, पण तुम्ही नंतर तुमचे कॉन्सेप्ट क्लिअर केले. पण आता सध्या तरी अंडरग्रॅज्युएट मध्ये पण खूप कॉम्पिटिशन आहे. सो लाईक हाऊ कॅन वी आउटस्टँड दॅट कॉम्पिटिशन?
See, there are various. I mean, I do understand that, like because of the geographical location or funding situation, maybe we don't get exposure or hands-on on the sophisticated techniques. But what you can do that, like during your semester break, for example, or during your like once your annual examinations gets over, so you have some 2-3 months time. So you can join in some industry, or in fact you can write to some professors in like institutes like ISC or IITs, or for example NCL, NCCS, NCPS. There are many institutes. So you can approach to like the professors and explain them that you are interested to learn some techniques. So you can like spend 2 to 3 months in different labs, and in 3 months, even if you learn 2 techniques, okay, that is more than sufficient. Like you don't have to learn like all the techniques. So at the end of your let's say 3 to 5 years, your undergraduation, graduation, even if you learn 10 techniques in 5 years, which you feel confident and you have good hands-on, that is sufficient. So these are the different ways by which you can harness your skills and techniques. So when you get free time, but it's not like your examinations are getting over, then next day you write to the professor. So you have to be planned that, okay, my exams are getting over in March or April. So you have to start at least 2-3 months before, start to communicate with different professors in various institutions, because it may happen that you will write 50 applications and maybe 1 or 2 faculties will say yes. Okay, so you have to approach to multiple professors from various institutions. Of course, when you approach, you should know why you are going to his lab. It is not like you type one cover letter, just change name and send it to 100 different professors, because they can easily make out. So when you are applying to that particular lab, you should know what lab that is working on, what are the techniques they are using. So you have to mention your cover letter that I have seen your lab, I have seen your work, these are the techniques you are using. So I would like to learn this technique, so that the professor will also come to know that, okay, the student knows about our work and they know that why they are coming to our lab. So this is one way, like you can approach. Normally what happens, students, they do, they just type one common letter and then send to, just change email address. Sometimes they don't even change the name of the professor. So that happens. So these are the different ways by which you can improve your skills.
Astha Singh, your question, please. Just one question, sir, now.
Hello, sir. You said you showed some companies name like Pfizer and Cipla. So being a fresher, what should I have in my resume or something, like I should be the priority for them? Something.
Yeah, you see, you need to learn some, see, you have to see, like what are the products, like are there for that particular company? What are the different techniques? So you should know, uh, learn some basic techniques. For example, chromatography. Okay. Nowadays, like in all companies, the drug designing has become very important. So you should learn some competition. So you should learn some techniques which are applicable to the industry. So that's what I'm saying. During your undergraduation and post graduation, you should utilize that free time for, like you join any company or any academic institutions or research institutions and try to learn some techniques, because if you know one or two techniques hands-on, that will make you different from others. And if some company, for example, if some company they are working on the protein purification or protein expression, so if you have spent some 2-3 months in a company or in any academic institution where you have learned that technique, and if you are approaching to that company with these your skills, they will be more than happy to take you, because they don't have to invest their time, they don't have to invest their resources, they'll be happy to take you. So developing your skills and learning techniques during your study will make you different from others. And that's where most of the students they fail actually.
Okay.
सुट्टीत मामाच्या घरी जायचं असतं, इकडे जायचं असतं, खेळायला जायचं असतं, मूवी बघा फ्रेंड वगैरे. So okay, those are things are also important, but what you should do, like you should try to learn something. In fact, that should be the objective of each and every student, that during their vacation they will learn at least one or two techniques. If you are not getting outside opportunity in other techniques, so you request your teachers there, your professor, do you know any, because every professor might be like competent in one technique, they can teach you one technique. So this is how you have to find ways by approaching people to improve, because it is ultimately you are who are going to benefit. So you have to see that how you can improve your skill by approaching different people within institute or outside institute.
Okay, sir. Now we have paucity of time, so we will have to stop here. I would like to thank Professor Avinash Sonawne, sir, for this inaugural talk on his success story and the prosperous research voyage. I must say, and I think everyone will agree, that your research journey was really very fascinating, and a great salute to your parents who believed in you to chase your dream. Today's talk was full of knowledge and interesting things. It gave deep insights into the topic and also revealed some interesting facts. I'm pretty sure that the precious information delivered by Professor Sonawne has inspired and ignited the young minds. Please join me to thank him for sparing his valuable time for all of us. I would also thank the student participants who joined in such great numbers for this event. This clearly shows their interest in the subject. I would also take this opportunity to thank the director of the institute, Dr. Satpute, for permitting us to organize this event. Thanks are also due to the head of the department, Professor Ullas Patil, and other staff members for their cooperation in organizing this lecture series. So I thank everyone for joining us for this lecture series. We'll be organizing more such interesting lectures through this lecture series. So thank you very much. Thank you, Professor Sonawne.
Yeah.